And in terms of risk, during planning, you plan for the risk management, you identify the various risks, perform qualitative risk analysis and quantitative, and also plan for the risk responses. And in the monitoring phase, you control the risks that have been identified and monitored upon. Procurement. In procurement phase, you plan the procurement management, conduct the procurements, that is execute the procurements, and then control them, and finally close them using the closing phase. And in stakeholders, you identify the stakeholders in the initiating process, plan for the management in planning stage, manage the stakeholder engagement activities in the execution phase, and control the stakeholder engagement in monitoring and control phase. So now we have quickly moved upon all the different knowledge areas and the different sectors, but now let us focus on each and every one of them one by one along the project life cycle. So let us start off with the project initiation process first. So going back to the definition of the initiating process once more. So the initiating process is a process performed to define a new project or a new phase of an existing project by obtaining authorization to start the project or phase. So we will be defining the initial scope, the financial resources that are required, and the internal and external stakeholders. So looking back into the knowledge area, so what is applicable here is developing a project starter and identifying the various stakeholders that are involved in it. So this is what we call for in the initiating process. So let's go by and now define what is a project charter is all about. So project charter is going to be a formal document that authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organization resources to the commissioned project activities. So let us look into the keywords. So first of all, it's a formal document because it is agreed upon and signed off by the management, so that will give the authority of the team members and the project manager to consume the various organization resource to those activities, because now nobody can stop you in demanding a resource, because that is all agreed upon in this project charter. Because once it is done and executed, nobody else can come and say that no, you can't use this resource. So now this is where this project charter will help us, because it is an authorization document that authorizes and acknowledges the existence of this project in the organization. And this provides the project manager to use the activities and also support the team members to consume those resources. Also, this project charter will have these contents within it. First thing is the purpose or the justification of the project charter. Why this project has been taken upon? What is the use of it? So this is what comes into the purpose or justification part of the project charter. Next is what is the objective of the project and how this project is going to be evaluated. So what is the success criteria of this project? So that is also fed into the charter. Next is all the high level requirement of the project are mapped into it. That means, suppose what are the major resources that are required, what be it the human resources or be it technological resources, what is required, and what are the project requirements are. So those kind of high level requirements are discussed upon and then fed into the project charter. Next, also a high level project description is given to it, because this project charter, as discussed, it is a formal document. So when taking upon and reading this project charter, should give the user an understanding of what this project is all about. So that is what the project description will help you to give in. And also in the charter itself, you'll map the high level risk that you're into the project by undertaking it. So this is also included in the project charter. Next is summary of the milestone schedule that we're looking at, because now here giving a overview of the time constraints that you are looking at. Time commitments of this project is captured in this summary of milestone schedule. And next, a summary of the budget in terms of cost is also included here, and all the project approval requirements. Suppose it has to be signed by the project manager, program manager at the portfolio level, the head of the department, or all those approval requirements are also captured within the charter. And who is the authority of this project? Who is the owner of this project? So that assignment is also done in this project charter. And who is the sponsor of this project? That is, this project is going to be consumed or useful by whom? So that person is going to be called as a sponsor of this project. So his or her name and authority is also included in the project charter. So as you can see in the various contents that are included in a project charter, you can see that almost all high level data of this project is going to be captured in this formal document. So typically for a project charter, it's a one-page document that encompasses almost all the information in brief. So next is the identification of the stakeholders. So stakeholders mean a person or a group of people who have a vested interest in the success of an organization and the environment in which the organization operates. To put simply, in the stock market, you are interested in buying a share because you are interested in the growth of the company. You want the company to perform well, so that you're putting out your hard-earned money into it, so that the company utilizes the resources, that is in a first term buyout I'm saying in that example. So the company will get your resource, that is the money, and then put it in a positive feasible route. So you are vesting your interest on the company. So now you have become a stakeholder of the company by purchasing a share. So that is a generic description of a stakeholders. There can be several stakeholders in the organization. So first it can be a customer, and customers are two different. They can either be an internal customer or an external customer. So internal customer means that suppose you're working in a finance department and you take care of all the costing segment, all those things. But service executive, he comes in for clearing of a warranty issue. So he now becomes an internal customer to your finance position, because in no direct way you will be linking with the processes of a service executive. But only if you clear the outstanding settlement for the warranty, then he can process the warranty claim and then issue it back to the external customer, that is the end customer. So now there is an internal transaction that is happening. So you have to identify your internal stakeholders as well. That is, if you are not executing a task, then the internal functioning will also get disrupted, and that's why you have to ensure that your internal stakeholders are catered to, so that your external customers will get catered automatically. So next is the suppliers to your organization is also an important stakeholders, because they are an active part of the success of the organization. Next is your dealers. So the suppliers will constitute the back facing of your industry. So if you are in a manufacturing industry, your suppliers will give you the raw materials and the sub-assembly parts. If you're OEM, so that you put it all together and then give it out to your next stakeholder, that is the dealer. So they will take it to the final customer. So you have two facing stakeholders, one in the back end and one in the front end in terms of customer interaction. So next is the shareholders that we were speaking about earlier, because those shareholders have invested in your firm or organization, believing and hoping and entrusting that you will go on a positive route in terms of both financial and in a growth trajectory, so that they can stay invested in your organization, believing that you can give benefits or profit to them. So the shareholders are also stakeholders to you. So next is the project planning phase. So the definition of the planning stage goes that this is a process performed to establish the total scope of the effort, the definition and redefinition of the objectives, and develop the course of action required to attain those objectives. So here we'll be targeting on developing of the project management plan and the various project documents, that will be used to carry out the project. So here we'll see what are the knowledge areas that we have. As you could recollect, during this planning process with different knowledge areas, what we are going to see now first is you have to develop a project management plan, and next you have to plan the scope management, then collect the requirements, then define the scope, create a WBS, plan the schedule management, plan the cost management, then develop a schedule for it, estimate the activity durations, estimate activity resources, sequence those activities, define these activities, next estimate the costs, then determine the budget, then in terms of quality, you plan for the quality management, then you plan for the human resource management, then the communication management, plan the risk management, plan stakeholder management, plan procurement management, plan the risk responses, perform quantitative risk analysis and also qualitative risk analysis, and then identify various risks. So you can see that we have a very dense overlap of several planning activities. So it means that in this stage, we have to do all these activities in tandem. These different subsets of the several knowledge areas that we have seen will help you ensure that the planning stage itself will account for most of the project requirements and helps you to ensure smooth sailing of the project. Because typically the main objective of making you go through all this understanding of all these things is that you can cross applicate these learnings in your day-to-day exposure of the industry, so that you can identify which task falls in where, and suppose if one of the tasks are being missed out, you can work on it so that in a later stage you need not worry about. So this is how the planning processes calls for different knowledge areas. So here now let us focus on the project management plan. So what it does is it focuses on three baselines. So the first one, it going to define on the scope, next is the time and cost. So what we are doing is we are splitting down this complex interaction into subsequent sections where you can identify and position them. So here the three baselines can be applied to 9 basic plans. That is, first as the scope management, next you manage for the schedule, next the cost, the quality, human resource, communication, risk, stakeholder, and procurement. So this is the major focus areas that you have to build on the three baselines and the 9 basic plans that you have to take care during this project management plan. So next is we'll see what are called as a project risk. So this is an important area that we need to understand. This is a part of the risk management. So what is called as a risk? So risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if at all it occurs, has a positive or a negative effect on the project objective. So you need to note that this is an uncertain event. It means that it might or might not happen. So in the case that is going to happen, it can have two possible reactions that can either have a positive effect or a negative effect on the project objective. So those kind of risks have to be quantified and included as a part of your risk management plan. So this risk can also be a combination of the probability of a defined threat or opportunity, and the magnitude of the consequences of the occurrence is taken as a risk index. So by terming an event as a risk, you bring in the probability of it happening, and then impact of it, how frequently it can happen, what is the probability of it's actually happening, and based on that you can define a index that quantifies the risk. So we can next quantify how this risk is going to impact our project. So this threat is defined on a scope. If this threat is carried out to scope, then it will result in a very poor quality product. Or as a threat to the schedule will impact the delivery of the project, and a threat to the cost will impact the cost schedules. That is, it can intend to overspend or taking in extra money or budget. So these are the different threats to the three critical areas that we have seen earlier on: scope, schedule, and cost. So this is why we need to have a very clear understanding of all the risk involved in various stages. They are clearly mapped upon and navigated around so that we can safely navigate around these risks. So that is a very, very important part of the project, that is the risk management. So here in this risk management, as seen earlier, what we are doing is we are identifying the risk, assess the likelihood and the impact of the risk that is quantified, and then rank them and prioritize them so that which should be attacked and which should be left off or deprioritized, and then define various risk management approaches and actions so that those risks can be managed and controlled. So that is being done by implementing those actions that you deem to contain the risks, and finally monitor and review them. So these are part of the risk management process. So this is what you intend to do in your project so that the risks are accounted and managed. So in this risk management, some of the key points that you need to consider are: you have to make the management of the risk integral in a way that the project can be managed. It should not get blown out of proportions. So next is, risks are always there in the project. So even in those cases, you have to ensure that the cost and time backups or the contingencies are consistent that are identified with the risk. So it means that all the backup options that you are taking up should get aligned with the risk management that you have, and so that they still stay within the project charter. Because as said earlier, in the project charter itself, you'll try to identify those risks and you try to accommodate them within the given structure. So this risk management ensures that even during occurrence of the risk, by proper management and mapping of them, you are able to overcome it with the backup plans that you have in place. Next is, always focus on the significant few and do not try to manage all the risks together. So there is an interesting law called as a Pareto law, Pareto principle. So what Mr. Pareto says is that if you have 100 issues in hand, typically only 20% of the issues will cause 80% of the problems. It means that we do not need to focus on all the 100 problems. The critical few, the significant few, are typically close to 20% of the overall issues. So it means that once you attack those 20% issues, 80% of your problems will get solved automatically, so that you can focus your effort only on those 20% of the significant issues, so that 80% of the risks are managed. So that is a key point that you have to take on. So simply means that you're prioritizing onto the major risk that can impact on your project. The next is, always be vigilant and proactive, so that because the risk can happen at any time, at any form, and through any persons also. So we always need to be vigilant. So one assumption of the risk might not be the same the next part. So we need to be proactive in identifying an upcoming risk, taking necessary course of steering so that they can be avoided even if not mapped in the early stage. That is, you're dynamically able to identify and avoid those risks. So next stage, now we look at the project execution stage. So as in management stage, this in project execution phase, what you're doing is all the processes that are going to be performed to complete the work defined in the project management plan so that the project specifications are satisfied. Then again, in the project execution, we have to produce results, and these results may require planning and updates of the base action. So here in execution process, the different knowledge areas that are called for are direction and management of the project work, performing quality assurance and acquiring a project team, developing of the project team, Managing all the stakeholders, conduct all the different procurements based on your budget and time, manage the communication between your stakeholders, be it internal or external, and also manage the project team. So typically, having planned all those things, so this, even though the knowledge areas are of low in quantity, this can be a lengthy process because this is the actual process where the actual work, actual timelines get applicated on.